Hi and welcome to ChinnyVision. This time we're looking at Arkanoid. Arkanoid hit the arcades in 1986 by Taito and is essentially a Breakout clone really from the Atari games of the 1970s and early 80s where you have to hit bricks using a ball and hitting them with a bat. There's a plot around the game which involves having to escape a mothership that you're trapped in, but essentially this really is just a Breakout clone. The game was ported to every single system you can imagine, and that's why we're going to restrict ourselves to the 8-bit versions here. There are versions for the ST and Amiga as well, and all sorts of other systems. The game in the arcade had a analog paddle controller, so it's going to be interesting to see how this translates to the digital controls on the home systems. So starting off on the Commodore 64, and a nice little bit of music here on the Commodore 64 version, and a title screen, the Imagine logo. Music's authentic to the arcade there, and off we go. And the difference here is that, unlike conventional Breakout, power-ups drop down that change things. For example, oh dear, the collision detection on this doesn't seem to be too good. Let's see if that's just a one-off. Power-ups drop down, and they can do things like make your bat wider, give you missiles to shoot at the bricks to disintegrate them, and you can stop them as there, so you can actually hold on to the ball and reposition yourself. Collision detection on this isn't particularly good on the Commodore 64 version here. You think you're going to hit it and the ball goes sailing past. Little baddies are released up the top of the screen there. They can't hurt you, but if you hit them with the ball, they will deflect the ball. So, and the baddies, once they've escaped from the top, they do try and creep down to the bottom of the screen. So you don't lose any lives for touching them, and if you hit them, you will kill them. But, as I say, they deflect the ball, so it can be a little bit challenging trying to intercept it. Just fast forward to level 2 here. As you can see, that's exactly what happened. The ball deflected off the enemy. It killed the enemy, but it deflected down. It's tempting to go for the power-up sometimes, but if you take your eye off the ball and you can't get back to it, then you'll lose a life. Over on the Commodore 64, it's quite a good port. As I say, I think the collision detection might be a little bit iffy, but it's a fairly solid port there and very well presented. Over to the Sinclair Spectrum. Beeper tune here on the menu screen. And unlike the Commodore 64 version, you get the full graphics from the arcade as well as the plot. Such as it is a plot. So same level layout within the Spectrum's graphical limitations. Just to get grips with the controls here. On the Spectrum version, it's very apparent that I do have a big old capture delay to deal with because the beeper is making sounds before I can actually see, before I've effectively seen that I've hit the ball. One nice thing here on the Spectrum is the controller. If you're quite far away from the ball, it becomes faster, and as you get close to the ball, it slows down. Slightly difficult to explain, but it helps emulate the analog controls from the arcade. Very nicely presented here, very colourful. A little bit faster than the Commodore 64. As I say, with the capture lag, I'm struggling a little bit here. Some of those bricks on the bottom level there take 2 hits to destroy, not just 1. The thing is about Arkanoid, there's not an awful lot to say about the gameplay. On the Spectrum, it's perfectly decent conversion. It's nice to have that emulation of the analog controller there certainly makes it a little bit easier to control than the Commodore 64 version. Now, as I was saying, Arkanoid was ported to every system under the sun, and this includes the Atari 8-bits, surprisingly, because there's not many Ocean/Imagine games that got ported. I think Green Beret was another one, but not many others. The ball here on the Atari XE is pretty ugly. It's just kind of a series of pixels, but it's well presented. The bat moves around nicely. Lots of nice colours here on level 1, certainly. The problem is, on the Atari, every alternate level has a green background, and it's incredibly difficult to see the ball against this green background. And I don't know why there's only these two backgrounds. Perhaps the memory limitations, I don't know. The blue background isn't so bad. It's just this green one, this constant use of green and horrible colours on every second level. This level is a little bit further on. It's round 6. A little bit more difficult, but it follows the level layouts as seen in the arcade. On the XE, and this is becoming a bit of a theme now, competent conversion, playable, shame about those colours on every second level really. On the MSX you might expect it to be a straight Spectrum port, but it's not. We've got some hardware sprites going on, a little bit slower, and that's actually no bad thing. It's very playable. They've got the blaster power up there so I can clear a lot of blocks in one go. It's very nice here on the MSX, I must say. Very polished conversion. I was expecting just a very lazy Spectrum port, but no, this is pretty good. The ball graphics very clear, unlike the Atari version there. We just moved on to round 3 here, which is a thing about Arkanoid. Some of these levels are actually quite hard. And you've got indestructible blocks on this level here. And you've got to try and get your ball up into there to get all the other blocks. And it's quite fiddly, actually. The difficulty level on this game, it starts difficult and gets even worse as it goes on. It's easier in the arcade with the analog controller, but on the home versions with the digital controller, it's a little bit difficult to sometimes hone in on the ball, especially when it speeds up like there. It gets to the point where you're moving the same speed as the ball, and in one false move you can't catch up. On the MSX, surprisingly good conversion. As I say, I was expecting something quite lazy, but no, it's good. Over to another Z80-based 8-bit system, and it's the Amstrad CPC. And this colour scheme here looks very similar to the arcade. Funny shaped ball, I must say. Why it's not solid, I don't know. Nice graphics, nice sound here on the CPC, moves around quite nicely. Little bit of slowdown when there's a lot going on. Not so evident here on level 1. When there's a lot of those baddies at the top of the screen moving around, the game does slow down. And it's not part of the gameplay, it's actually just... And you can see there, just as that power-up appeared on screen, it just slows down. And that's a shame, because the CPC version really does look the part. Here on level 8, it's even more obvious that the ball is slowing down, depending on what those baddies are doing as they move around the screen. That's quite distracting, actually. I was saying how good this Amstrad version is, and it's such a shame that there's this slowdown, because this looks so close to the arcade in terms of its visuals. Another system that you might not have thought this game would have got ported to, but did, was the BBC Micro, a machine not known for its quality arcade conversions. And look, it looks really nice. Same colour scheme as the CPC version, despite that limited palette. Moves around really quickly. Good sound, and it really looks like the arcade version. A little bit fast, but the collision detection is spot on. It plays really well. It's unusual to see something that looks so visually appealing on the BBC Micro, really. Usually the games end up looking quite garish, but they've managed to get a purple block there just by using some stippling on the graphics. Looks really good, plays really good, and a complete surprise for a BBC Micro game. So, Arkanoid. Yes, essentially it's Breakout, it's a limited game. they can dress it up and add all those power-ups, but essentially there's only a limited amount of appeal in the original game. That said, all the home conversions are pretty good. C64 version, I think, has some collision detection issues that are slightly annoying. The Atari version has those unattractive graphics on every second level. That green colour scheme makes the ball really difficult to see, so that can be quite annoying. The other versions, all equally good. I'd be hard-picked to pick out which version I'd want to play. And no matter which system you've got a pretty solid conversion of Arkanoid.